The question of free will is perhaps the most important philosophical question we can consider. What you believe about free will shapes how you view not only yourself but the world. As general consciousness expands, we recognize that what the mind holds matters. I think it's remarkably true what Marcus Aurelius wrote. Such as are your habitual thoughts, such also will be the character of your mind, for the soul is dyed by the thoughts. Today I see so many people that are representing this worldview that is ultimately destructive to human nature. Aside from the pragmatic standpoint, it's just logically flawed to believe that we exist without free will. Today I'm going to go over the most frequent arguments against free will and tell you why they're wrong. So the most widely known argument against the existence of free will is the determinist view. This states that all events are the result of a prior cause. This view embodies a notion of fate or predestination. It argues that the system is closed and that there is nothing that can be done in order to alter what will eventually happen. However, neither quantum mechanics nor string theory have been able to predict future events. Certainly, environments follow a particular set of laws consistently, but there remains a great level of chaos. Given the complexity of our world and our continual inability to forecast future events, it seems fair to reason that it's an unachievable task, because it supposes the wrong assumption about the nature of the world. If there is a pattern to the events of the world, it exists at such a complex level that it would transcend what the human mind could possibly understand. Further considering this potential, one would then also consider the role of intelligent design that would have to be involved in order to create such a remarkably complex physical reality with the end in mind. Now, when we look at individuals, it seems a lot more straightforward. If people always acted in accordance with the same universal principles, regardless of their physical or mental conditions, they would either seem highly disciplined or uncannily robotic. Considering the multitude of potential values and motivating factors that each individual can carry throughout our lifetime, we need to frame it in terms of logic and reasoning. To determine whether one is acting rationally or irrationally, we must observe if the individual's actions align with the highest order of their personal aims. How often does the individual faithfully execute their internal values and intentions? Certainly we can be rational, but we can also succumb to objects of distraction or participate in activities that may satisfy the present but injures our future aims. We know that people don't always act in accordance with logic. They can make choices that by every measure seems illogical. Another unpredictability regarding people is how art can transform the individual. When we consume art or music or literature, there's no way to gauge how an individual is going to respond to that. It can awaken parts of ourselves that would otherwise remain dormant. This is why oppressive regimes go out of their way to destroy architecture and burn books. The next philosophical argument against the conception of free will is founded on the limitation of human will. They argue that because there are neurological and environmental constraints that exist at any given time for the individual, that we do not have full control over the conditions and preferences of our own consciousness. Therefore, we do not have free will. My first point is that this view obscures the intuitive understanding of what the nature of free will is by ignoring the known conditions of human existence. This argument suggests that because individuals do not have absolute control over the conditions of both the environment and the will of the mind, that we cannot have free will. But with this reasoning, in order to exhibit free will, we would have to have full control over our physical and psychological nature, as well as all conditions of the material world. If these are the conditions that are required in order to be in possession of free will, then free will is not a faculty that can belong to any individual because humans are finite in nature. This is a faculty that can only exist in a God. Does it seem reasonable that we must alter human nature entirely in order to be recognized as having possession of free will? Or is it rather that the assumed framework of an absolute free will is being misrepresented as the necessary criterion of free will? I believe that these conditions ascribed to free will is really illustrating the conditions of something more than what can seriously be expected of free will. Why would one assume to have perfect and absolute free will when nothing regarding human nature can be observed as absolute or perfect? How could a being of such nature be expected to have a faculty of godlike proportions, like absolute free will? In spite of having limited control over our environment, neurological and spiritual inclinations, that doesn't mean that we're not still making choices amongst our competing values and desires. We still can exercise free will, though it is not absolute in its ability to determine the manner of its own condition, nor the objects of its own desire. Feel free to let me know what you think regarding this topic of free will. Ultimately, the recognition of free will is really important. It helps you to live a more fully embodied existence. You don't have to resign yourself to victimhood. You're not just a person that experiences what happens to you. You're an agent of change in your own life. And that way it's very important. Really, it's not good to let mental poison govern your thinking. It's strange to me that the people that pride themselves the most regarding their logic and their pragmatism decide to champion ideas that lead to personal degeneration and utter despair. Granted, do I believe that everyone operates on the same conscious level every waking moment? No. And a great deal of one's existence can be lived on autopilot or denial. Some are more imprisoned by their environments and conceptions than others, but that doesn't mean that it will always be that way for them. There's always a chance to wake up, and the only way to free yourself is to make a choice.